Starting out our second video for Academic Super Bowl Math Questions 2021. We are looking at question number 9. So we have these points and it's asking what kind of triangle are these the vertices for. So if we would just sketch these out, we've got negative 4, 0, 4, 0, and 0, 3. So if we sketch out that triangle, this is off a little bit with my drawing, but these two sides are going to be the same length as each other. This other side's going to be a longer side. So if you weren't sure about that, if there was a different kind of triangle, you could make this into two right triangles. So this would be 4, this would be 3. And this is actually a Pythagorean triple, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the smallest whole numbers that work to make a right triangle. So that would be able to tell you then altogether, this would be 8. So we've got a triangle with lengths 5, 5, and 8. Anyway, two sides are the same, makes it an isosceles triangle. Isosceles, two sides are the same. A way to remember that, isosceles, you got an I and you got a CE in it later, is like an ice cream cone. So ice cream cone has two sides that are the same if you kind of just looked at that two-dimensionally as a triangle. Equilateral has all three sides, equilateral, equal sides, and then scalene, none of the sides are the same. Number 10, we have a kite, and they are asking what the area of the kite is. So if we just graph these out, I'll use a actual graph this time. Sometimes just even getting a sketch of how things are might be sufficient, but okay, so this is what the kite would look like roughly. And so if we want to find the area of this, one way of doing this would be you could just split this in half into two right triangles that are identical to each other. And then if you look at this, the side lengths, this goes from -2 up to 5. So -2 to 5, that would be 7 units. And then this would have a height of 2. So area of a triangle is half base times height. So half times 7 times 2. 7 times 2 is 14, so half of 14 is 7. And then the other part is going to be identical. So 7 plus another 7 would make that have an area of 14 square units. So that should be answer choice B. Another way of doing this, you could figure out the diagonal measurements on the kite, and then you could do half of the diagonals multiplied together. 7 we already have. The other diagonal going across here all the way across would be 4. So you could take 7 times 4 is 28. Half of that is 14, but it might be simpler, I think, just to split it into two identical triangles. I think that's going to stick with you longer than just trying to memorize a random formula. Number 11, we have 2 points. One is the midpoint, and then one is the end point. And the question is, what's the other end point is what we're trying to find. So if we just sketch those points out, -2, 9 is going to be off the chart here, I guess. and then 2, 8. So if negative 2, 9 is the midpoint, what that tells us is that the graph, the line's going to continue going this way. So our x value is going to be more negative, and our y value is going to be bigger than negative 2, 9. So that really right away eliminates C and D. And then you could think about it, one way you could think about it is if you go from 2, 8 to negative 2, 9, you'd have to go over 4 and up 1. So if you go over 4 and up 1 again, that would take you to that other point. So over 4 from negative 2 going to the left would take us to negative 6 and up 1. So negative 6, 10 would be the midpoint, or would be the other end point. Another way you could do that is if people just split these up and say, I'm going to try A, you try B, and just test these as endpoints. Just say, I'm going to try this one, and just endpoints of when we're looking for the midpoint, remember you add and divide by 2. So if you add your x's and divide by 2, add your y's and divide by 2, this would be negative 4 divided by 2. So half of negative 4 would be negative 2. This would be 18 divided by 2, which would be 9. So that would be another way of doing it. And then you wouldn't even really have to graph it then. People could just, everybody split up and work out a problem and figure out which one actually works to give you that as the midpoint. Number 12, we have this triangle, and triangle ABC is reflected over the x-axis and then reflected over the y-axis. What are the coordinates of the vertices of A prime, B prime, C prime? Okay, so there's each of those. So if we reflect over the x-axis, that's going to put the triangle over here. And then if you reflect that across the y-axis, it's going to put it down here. So this is where we're going to end up, which is in the fourth quadrant. In the fourth quadrant, x values are positive and y values are negative. So that would be one thing to watch for. That one doesn't have negative y values. So I guess we're technically looking at all three of these options as potential candidates, but basically what's going to happen when you reflect across the y-axis, then you just take opposite x values, and then when you reflect across the y-axis, you take opposite y values. So really what's going to happen is all of these, the signs are just going to change. So instead of negative 3, 1, we're going to be at 3, negative 1. So 3, negative 1, the only one that matches with that would be choice B. And you could also on this one, each person could just take one point. You take point A, I'll take point B, you take point C, and every person just take their point and reflect it across the X and across the Y, and then see what all you get. Number 13, they want an equation of the line if the x-intercept and y-intercept are negative 2 and 4 respectively. Respectively means in that order. So x-intercept they mentioned first, so the x-intercept is negative 2, which tells us the line goes through the point negative 2, 0. Y-intercept is 4, tells us that it goes through the point 0, 4. So probably simplest thing for this would be just to try those into the different options and see what works. So if you put in negative 2, 0, so 0 in for y, I'm looking at this one, 0 in for y, negative 2 in for x. And we're just seeing if this works or not. So this part, we got negative 2 times negative 2 would be a positive 4. And then 4 minus 4 is 0. I don't really care about the 0 in front of there. So that works. And then we could try 0, 4. So 0, 4, we're putting a 4 in place of y. We're putting a 0 in place of x. And really we should put a question mark because we're seeing if this works or not. Okay, so essentially we have 4 minus 4, which is 0. So that works also. So A is our answer. Okay, luck of the draw, I guess. But if you split them all up, everybody just substitute into their own possibility. And then if nobody's works A, B, and C, then hopefully then it should be D. Number 14, we want an equation of the circle with this information. So they've given us a center, and then it says tangent to x equals 9. If it's tangent to a point, what that means is that it's actually just barely touching that point. So just sketch this out. So there's the center. It's tangent to x equals 9. Okay, so here's the point 9, 0. It's easy to get confused on what is what, but if you just think about it, x equals 9, it's x equals or y equals, they're always either vertical or horizontal lines. They're actually opposite of what you might think. X equals 9 actually is going to be a vertical line. So here's the point 9, 0. Another point, if you go above that, would be 9, 1, 9, 2, whatever. So all the points where x equals 9 would be on this vertical line. So if our circle is tangent to it, that means the circle is just barely hitting that line. And what that tells me then is that this would be our radius of our circle. Okay, so if the center was at 14, negative 4, and these are all x equals 9, this would be at 9, negative 4. What I'm really focusing on is the x values. The y values are the same because it's straight across from it. X values, if we went from 9 to 14, that's a difference of 5. So that tells me the radius is 5. And then our formula for a circle is this, where the center is at the point HK. So notice it's minus h, it's minus k, and then we've got r squared. So if the radius is 5, the radius squared would be 25, and actually there's only one that even has that option. Besides that, though, we're looking for opposites of these to be in the parentheses. So minus 14 and plus 4. And that's what we've got for answer choice C. Number 15, continuing looking at circles, we have a radius with endpoints of 2, 5, and negative 1. And this actually, sorry, this was a typo. This was supposed to be negative 1, negative 4. And they want us to find the area of the circle. Okay, so all right, so basically we want to find that distance. Not the best line ever, but if we can find that distance, this is going to be, so from negative 1 to 2, that's a difference of 3 units. And then the y values go from negative 4 to 5, that's a difference of 9 units. So I guess we'll just do r for the radius. Okay, so Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We'll change it to an R, I guess. Okay, so that would be 90. That's the radius squared. We could figure out the radius by taking the square root, but area of a circle is equal to pi times the radius squared. So it's actually would be simpler if I just leave it as r squared, and then I can say it's pi times 90. That's the same as 90 pi square units, which would be choice D. Number 16, we have a circle with diameter AB. So A is at negative 211, and the center is at 4, 7. Find the coordinates of B. So basically then the center is just the midpoint. So, you could try these out and see, if this is the midpoint, what gives us that midpoint. So negative 2, we're going to add and divide by 2. If you just think about this for the x's, if you try choice A, negative 2 plus 2 would be 0 divided by 2 is 0. So this would be 0 something. Our midpoint actually is 4 something. So that tells me 2 is too small. So if 2 is too small for an x value, there's only one that has a bigger x value than that, which is choice C. And we could just double check with that. So if we put 10 and we put in 3, again adding and dividing by 2, so that'd be 12 divided by 2. Okay, I changed the wrong one here, sorry. This should be negative 2 plus 10. I was looking at the wrong thing. So that'd be 8 divided by 2, which is 4. And then 3 plus 11 is 14 divided by 2 is 7. So there's our 4, 7. And so that would work. Like I said, you could just split them up. Everybody try their own and then see what works or doesn't work. Or you could graph it, try and sketch out a graph quickly and then see, from there you could gauge that you actually need a bigger x value than 4 if that's the midpoint. And so C is going to have to be it. Number 17, they want us to find the equation of the circle. So two things we want to look at. We want to look at the coordinates of the center, which would be negative 2, negative 4. And we want to look at the radius. Always double check what they're going by. I know this is a little off maybe on where they're actually putting their numbers, but negative 1, negative 2. Okay, so that would be a radius of 1. So we've got a r squared should be on the right side of the equation. So 1 times 1 is 1. So that eliminates B and C. And then remember the other parts in the parentheses have to be opposite, because it's x minus h squared and y minus k squared. So opposite of negative 2 would be a plus 2. Opposite of minus 4 would be plus 4. And so that's going to be answer choice D. Number 18, they've given us the center and a point on the circle. The good thing about this is these are straight across from each other. So from negative 6 to negative 10, that's a difference of 4. So that tells me the radius is 4. So the radius squared would be 16. So that narrows that down. And then the center, these have to be opposites in the parentheses. So that would be a 6 and a plus 15. Plus 6 plus 15 would be choice C. 19, they've given us the center and the radius. So for the center, we're looking for plus 3 and minus 14. So plus 3 and minus 14. So we're between C and D. 3 square root of 2, you could actually put that in your calculator and square it, and it should give you 18. So r squared is equal to 18, and that would be choice D. Another option, I guess, you could type in 3 square root of 2 on your calculator and then get that and then square it by hitting the x squared button, and then that would give you 18 as well. Basically the 3 is being squared and the square root of 2 is being squared. So 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. Square root of 2 squared is 2. 9 times 2 is 18. Number 20, they've given us the center and they've given us the area. So if the area is 4 pi, area is pi r squared. So if you just think of that, the pi's are on both sides here if we substitute that in. So basically that tells me that the radius squared is equal to 4. And we can just keep it as the radius squared because radius squared is the right side of our equation. So that gets it down to either A or D. And then if you look at these have to be opposites. So plus 8 plus 9, that would be answer choice A.